.NET for Devices presents EvenTiles. Part 6, the Isolated Storage Explorer tool. Hello once again. So this time in part 6 of EvenTiles we are not going to add functionality to our application, but we're going to take a look at the Isolated Storage Explorer tool to check out what was stored in isolated storage. Now let's start the application one more time. And this is just the application we finished in episode 5. So we have that text there having an even number of tiles on my start screen. I'm going to modify that text again. So we're going to change it into having this even number of tiles on my start screen. Then I'm just going to use the back button to exit the application by pressing it a couple of times. And what we are interested in is take a look if this text has now been stored in isolated storage. And for that what we can do is make use of the Isolated Storage Explorer tool. And that tool is part of the Windows Phone 7.1 SDK. It's a command line tool, so I'm just going to navigate to that command line tool right now. It is stored on the program files, or if you have a 64-bit operating system, on the program files x86 under Microsoft SDKs, then under Windows Phone. And then we're just going to navigate deeper into this path. The next one is gonna be version 7.1, and there under tools we have a selection of tools available. One of them is the Isolated Storage Explorer tool, so that's in its own separate folder. And let me just make sure to have that command window a little bit bigger. And now let's navigate to that folder and take a look at the actual command itself, which is the ISE tool, or the Isolated Storage Explorer tool. Now it has many options available, so let's take a look at them. And what you can see already, it's a typical command line prompt here, and its parameters is a whole bunch of them. So what we can do is take a snapshot of the current isolated storage contents of our application. We can do that either in the emulator or from a physical device, and we're gonna pass a GUID or global unique identifier for our application, so we're not going to refer to our application by name. We also need to specify a target folder for that isolated storage snapshot, and we're just going to use that folder ISO on my C drive there. So let's just go ahead and enter our command here. It's going to be ISE tool. Then I'm going to specify my parameters, so I want to take a snapshot. I want to take my snapshot from the emulator, and I need to figure out what application I'm interested in, and of course that's gonna be our EvenTiles application. So in order to find out what GUID it has, we can open Visual Studio, and I'm gonna go to my properties there. I'm gonna open my WM app manifest file, and there you see a product ID, and that product ID contains the global unique identifier that we need. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to go back to my command prompt. I'm going to paste it in my command prompt here as a parameter to the ISE tool. So we're just going to paste that GUID, and then what we also need to do is specify the location where we want to store that snapshot of our isolated storage for this particular application, being EvenTiles. And that location is going to be C ISO, and that's the folder. Unfortunately, something is going wrong here because I have an invalid parameter. So let's take a look, and what I can see there is that, hey, to specify device emulator I need an XD. So let's try this again, and this time it is successful. So what we did now is download the isolated storage contents to our hard drive here, and what you can see is that there's a folder containing a couple of subfolders with optionally media, shell content and transverse information in there. Now they are empty in our situation, but what we do have is the application settings, because we were storing that particular string inside application settings. And if we go back to Visual Studio right now, and if we just open the file we were working on in episode 5, app.xaml.cs, what you will see is that, hey, when we started there, our app settings, we just got a reference to the isolated storage settings and used that static class application settings. Well, this application settings that we now just got a snapshot from, that's an exact copy of the contents of that particular file. And the app settings are stored in an XML format, so I can just open that inside Visual Studio. And what you can see here is that, hey, we have a key, and that key is part of a dictionary together with a value. The key is K_ASBC, and our value is having this even number of tiles on my start screen, and that's exactly the contents of our isolated storage application settings that we were setting when we were running the application, because we modified that default string we had there. So if we start the application again and go to the settings screen, we should see exactly that same string there. Now I'm going to restore back to the default value. We're going to terminate the application. We're going to also terminate this instance of application settings, and we're not going to save that. And what you noticed probably already is that, hey, it's kind of hard using a command line tool, but there's that key, by the way, the key that you saw in the application settings as well. But it's kind of hard using a command line tool, and if you like to have a Windows application, what you could do is go to wptoolscodeplex.com, because what you see there is the Windows Phone power tools, and they are sort of a, like a nice window layer on top of those command line tools. You can download them there. They are completely free, and that's what I did. So let me just now start those power tools. I'm just going to search for them on my system, and here they are, the Windows Phone power tools. I'm going to start them, and you see a very nice Metro-like user interface here instead of that command line prompt, and I can immediately select whether or not I want to use a real device or the emulator. There's a couple of tools here. I can see what applications are installed inside my emulator right now. I can give them a better name if I want to, but I'm just going to leave that quit for right now. I can install new zaps from this location, but I also have a file browser available, and that file browser again is browsing through isolated storage. So here I have that same shared folder tree and an application settings. And those application settings are, of course, in the device. So what I'm going to do now is deleting that folder on my C drive from my development system, because I want to take another snapshot, but this time making use of those power toys. So I'm going to create an ISO folder again. I'm taking my application settings and I'm just going to get them from my device, and I'm going to store them on my development system under drive C in that ISO folder. And now instead of the entire tree, I just have my application settings there. I'm going to drag and drop those again to Visual Studio, and this time, since I altered back into that default string, this time we should see that default string available, which is the case. So if we're running our application and go to the settings screen again, you can see that we have a matching string there. And what we also can do now is just alter that string inside our application settings snapshot. I'm going to store that snapshot. So remember, this is still on my hard drive on my development system. And what we're now going to do is write that information back into the device. And that makes a lot of sense also, especially if you are, for instance, updating applications. You want to make sure that your application settings are working properly. So what I tried now is updating, but if you take a look at the date and time created, it's 11/20, which is not exactly right there. So if I'm going to run my application, probably we did not have that modified string there because we did not get a new version of our application settings to the device. In order to do that, what we need to do is check that checkbox overwriting existing, and only then we will overwrite the existing application settings on our device. I'm going to select the one from my hard drive. We've just overwritten it this time, and we can see that by the date that this file was created, because now it's a later date as a creation date. So if I'm now going to run EvenTiles again and go to my settings screen, what you now will see is that, hey, we have a modified string there, and that modified string actually came from our hard drive, and we just copied our application settings from our development machine to the device. Oh, and by the way, let me just end with a shameless plug this time. EvenTiles, the application, is available on Marketplace, so you can search for it, download it on your machine, and take a look at all the functionality that we will cover in the upcoming episodes. So what you can see is that, hey, there's going to be a nice main screen with a button. That button is responsible for installing a secondary tile on our device. We can also share with Facebook and stuff like that. And there's advertisements inside the application. I'm going to show you step by step for all this information, how it's going to be implemented inside our application. We are familiar already with the settings screen. There's going to be an about page also in the application, and there's also, you know, like this same screen dumps that we're going to show you how to make them as well while publishing the application. Also in a light theme available for all those different screens. So as you can see already, there's many steps still that we have to cover. So EvenTiles will continue next time when we will talk about tombstoning and fast application switching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully until the next episode of EvenTiles.